Okay, so let's pull open the assignment real quick. So critical thinking exercise 7. Let's make this a little bigger. All right, so I'm going to skip down to the roof portion of this exercise. Okay, I think that's where we're probably all struggling a little bit. So I'm going to step down to part 6, step 6 of reference planes. And so we'll create the reference planes, we'll create the beam system, and we'll add the roof. Yeah. I think that's probably where most of the questions lie for this assignment. So the first step is to create a reference plane 2 inches by 12-inch slope. Okay, so how I might figure that out right now is this. So I'm going to go to my elevation, and I know a few of you have mentioned that, well, my computer makes me put in degrees and not punching it in traditionally. Traditionally, you would say 2 to 12 or 4 to 12 or whatever the slope is. So if that's the case and your computer is set up to take in degrees versus punching in the traditional way, what you'll do to change that is you can go up to manage and you can go to project units. Okay, this will show you all of the units for everything that you do in your project. So I'm going to go down to slope right here, 17.5 inches, and you would change that to decimal degrees, or you can change it back to ratio over 12. All right, ratio over 12 is typically how you would do it in an everyday work environment, okay? But if you want to punch it into degrees for whatever reason, which is fine, you could go to decimal degrees. The nice thing about, even if it's on decimal degrees, you could still punch in a ratio over 12 slope, and it'll just convert it to the degrees by itself. So I'm gonna leave it at this for now. Hit OK. All right. Yep, manage. So I clicked on manage. This is where I would typically go to find like any project settings. If something is just not right in your project, go up to manage and look through your different toolbars in terms of settings. Okay, because lots of different settings and parameters up here. Your materials, snaps. Maybe you want your snaps to behave a little bit differently. Your project units. And if you go down to additional setting, you have things like line styles, line weights, and you can control all of the little details of of every tiny thing in Revit. So that's really a whole nother, you could have a lecture on just all of these little things, but you'll have to probably explore a lot of that on your own time. So you're going to go to manage, project units, and then I'm going to go to slope. Okay, and I'm going to change that to ratio over 12. You could also use decimal degrees if you want to punch it in terms of a degree. Okay, but I'm going to leave it on ratio over 12. Hit OK, and then I'm going to create my reference point. So I want the higher end of my slope to be on this side of my building. So I need my west. Is it the west side? Is that how it's set up? Okay, so let's go over to the west. My west elevation. I got all kinds of stuff open here. Let's close all this down. So let's go to my west elevation. Okay, so I guess for me it's actually east. Okay, so I'm gonna go to east. Okay, because I want my nice high rafters to extend out over my curtain wall. Okay, so 2 to 12. How would I draw 2 to 12 without knowing exactly what the degrees is? Yes, you could draw a flat reference plane and you can just rotate it to whatever that degrees is. Okay, that is an option. An easy way though to draw 2 to 12 is you could do this. So I'm going to draw a detail line. And so what it is, it means that for every 12 inches of run that you have, it's going to rise 2 inches. Okay, that's 2 to 12. So I'm going to start over here at the edge of my building. I'm going to go over 1 foot. Okay, and I'm going to go up 2 inches. Okay, and I'm going to draw a line from this corner to this corner. All right, so that's a 1 foot run and a 2 inch rise. All right, so or 12 inches of run, 2 inches of rise. That's the same thing as 2 to 12. That's a 2 to 12 slope. If I wanted a 4 to 12 slope, this would be 4 inches instead of 2 inches. Okay, so that right there is a 4 to 12 slope. All right, I'm going to leave it at 12 or at 2 to 12. Okay, and this line, that diagonal line that I just created is representational of a 2 to 12 slope. Okay, so I'm going to take that. I may have just messed it up. Let's do it this way. Let's make sure that we do this correctly. I'm just going to draw a line over here. Okay, and I'm going to use my trim tool. Boom. That is a 2 to 12 slope right there. Okay? So 2 to 12. So now I'm going to go to architecture, and I'm going to go over to reference plane. Reference plane, and I'm going to use my pick lines tool, and I'm going to select that line that I just created. Okay, that is that. I just selected a line that I know is already 2 to 12. Okay, so I can now get rid of the line that I just drew, and I'm just going to keep this reference plane that we just created. And I'm going to call this beam system. I'll just call it beam system. Okay? Does that make sense? And how we got to that? Yeah, and how we created the 2 to 12 slope, or how we know it's 2 to 12?
But if we want to do the same procedure with rotate.
Oh, like we did last time?
Yeah.
So if you can figure out what the actual slope is, so let's just see what the actual slope for that is, okay? So right now I'm just going to go to annotate, angular. I'm going to select both of these lines right here. So that's 9.46 degrees. That's what 2 to 12 is equivalent to, is that right there, 9.46.
Any formula to convert this equation?
So if you, basically you're breaking down 12 inches into degrees. So if you divide 90 by 12, am I doing that correctly? I'd have to actually, let's see. Let's see, I'm pull out my calculator here. So 90 divided by 12, that means that every inch would be equivalent to 7.5 inches. Well, that wouldn't be 9.46. Let me try something else. I may come back to that question. 9.46. That doesn't seem right. I'll come back to that question in terms of actually creating a formula. Okay, but that's an easy way to do it. The first way I showed you is by far, instead of pulling out math and creating a formula, you can draw a very simple, going back to algebra, when we all took algebra or geometry, simple 2 to 12 slope. Okay.
Because I was trying to rotate the angle. And I put 2 inches by 12 inches, but it didn't give.
Yeah, that's not going to work. Yeah. No, you have to know if you're going to do it if you're going to do it that way, you have to know the degrees. So, there's several ways you can do it. One of the ways is how I just showed you, and you don't have to rotate it. Okay, you're just selecting a line that you know is 2 to 12, which is, I would say, the preferred way to do it. But it doesn't say that you can't calculate the degrees. Okay, so we have our reference plane. 2 to 12 slope right here. From here, I'm going to create my beam system. All right, so I am going to go to my 3D view. I'm going to look at this overhead, and I'm going to type in structure, and I'm going to go to, actually before I go to beam system, let's make sure that we have the beams that we want. So right now, preloaded into my properties dialog box, I have a 4x8 piece of dimensional lumber. So that's an option. Okay, that's what I had chose for this. If you want something else, you could go to edit type. Maybe we want something a little bit different. Maybe like a nice big beefy beam that's really presentable and has some nice architectural lines to it. We could go to load. We could go to structural framing, wood, dimensional lumber, and I'm going to pick something a lot bigger. So I'm going to pick something like I guess we actually have to go to timber. Let me change that up a little bit. I'm going to go to structural framing, wood. Timber. Okay, now we'll have much more options. Let's pick like an 8x12. 8x12, nice big beam. All right, so maybe 6x12. I like that better. So I'm going to pick that 6x12. I'm going to hit OK. It's going to load it into my file. I'm going to hit OK, and now I can go to my beam system. So I'm going to go to structure, and I'm going to go to beam system, and I'm going to make sure that I have the beam that I just selected, timber 6x12, so that works. Okay, so what's the spacing of these beams? 6 feet's probably fine. You could probably do 4 feet or something like that. Okay.
6 here.
Yeah, that's fine. This is, I mean, we're not gonna. I'm sure if we got into the details of how that roof would actually work, somebody would probably tell me otherwise that it would actually be less than that. But for what we're doing in this class, that's fine. So you're going to define the spacing of how you want that, fixed distance. I've also defined what type of beam I'm going to use for my beam system. The next step is going to be to define the boundary. So I want my beam system to I want it to cantilever over the back wall by a foot. Okay, I'm also going to say that it's not going to cantilever over the sidewall. So I'm going to select my sidewall on both sides, and I'm going to let it cantilever over the front by 6 feet. Okay, so something like that. So I'm going to use my trim tool, trim all of my, so I have a nice complete box. Okay, the last step is going to be to define the beam direction. All right, so I'm going to click on beam direction, and I want all my beams to be horizontal as shown on my screen. So I'm going to use my line tool, beam direction, line tool, and I'm just going to draw a line in any given location. All right, that's just showing that I want the beams to go in that direction. All right, and then I'm going to hit check. Actually, let's go back. The one thing I did not do is I did not set my work plane. Let's set that work plane to, shoot, sorry. You have to set it before you do the beam system. So I'm going to select those lines that I just created. I'm going to copy it, cancel out of it, yes, and I'm going to set my work plane prior to doing that beam system. I'm going to go ahead and select beam system, hit OK. Now I'm going to go back and do the same thing I just did, and I'm going to paste in place, or paste, let's see, here we go. I don't know why paste in the exact place is not an option. Align to selected levels, that's fine. Nope, that won't work. Yeah, there should be a paste in place option, but I'll just paste from clipboard, that's fine. Okay, so there's my, oh, but the other way around. It's actually backwards. Can easily fix that. Why is this? Am I at a, oh, I'm in a 3D, oh, I'm in a 3D view. Okay.
Yeah.
That's weird that it's not letting me select. Oh, you know why? It's because these lines are actually, if I go to my 3D view, see how the lines are actually in that plane? That's why it's being a little goofy on me, because I'm actually looking at this and, alright, so I'm just going to say that's good for now. Okay, so that looks good. I'm going to go ahead and hit the check mark. Beam direction not specified. Let's go back, add our beam direction, use our draw line tool, hit the check mark, and there are my beams.
So I have to draw the beams in the 3D views.
No, you don't have to. You can, every view, you can draw anything you want in any view you want. There's no, all the views are there for your use. So if you like to, I can draw in my floor plans, I can draw in my elevations, I can draw in my 3D views. It's just whatever your preference is. I've gotten used to being able to draw things in whatever view I want, because as soon as you kind of start to understand reference planes enough, it doesn't matter what view you're in, as long as you understand where your reference plane is, where you're drawing, okay? So there's our beam system that we just created. So the next step is going to be to create a roof. All right, so just like we were doing before, I'm going to go over to architecture. I'm going to go to roof by footprint. So it's saying that the work plane of this view cannot be used for this operation. So that's fine. I just need to make sure I set my reference plane back to a regular orthogonal view. Okay, so I'm going to change that to like level 3. That is good. And I'm going to go back to roof by footprint. All right, and I'm going to trace that exact footprint that I had just created. Okay, and I also created a wood rafter 8-inch. Let's see, these are all, actually, let's use that one right there. All right, and then from here, I'm going to go ahead and trace the outline of the roof that I just created. All right, use my trim lines tool to just trim this up. All right, and I think I also wanted the roof to also extend by maybe a foot. This is just my own personal preference. I don't think I state this in the exercise. Okay, so now the only problem is right now all 4 of these lines are defining slope. So if I hit the check mark, I'll actually have like a pyramidal roof. Okay, so I want the only line or the only side that I want to define slope is going to be where I want the slope to start, which is from the back. Okay, we want the slope to start here and get higher as it moves in this direction. So I am going to select all of these lines and uncheck define slope. All right, so now that I only have one line defining the slope, I'll select it and I'll actually give it a slope. So I'm going to say 2 inches over 12 inches. Okay, and enter. All right, and we should be good. I'm going to go ahead and hit the check mark. Would you like to attach the highlighted walls to this roof? I sure would. Delete. Okay, it didn't do them all for whatever reason, but now I can select all of these walls. I'm going to attach top to base to my roof. Okay, the only thing that I want to do, my roof is just a little too high right now. I want that roof to sit right on top of my beam system. So I'm going to take that roof and I'm going to just bring it down to align with the top of my beam system. Okay? Look good? So that would do that. If you wanted to add like a fascia to cover up this little thin little flimsy roof, that would be an option too. Actually, technically right now this is a little, I'm going to take my curtain wall, I'm going to detach it from my roof because I actually would rather have the beams going through the actual wall and not the glass. Okay, so from here I might refine it a little bit more. I'm going to go to roof, fascia. So fascia 1x12 is fine. I'm going to go around and apply that fascia. And that'll cover up most of our edges. And it actually gives the roof some actual needed depth. It's not this flimsy little 1-inch thick roof. That's just basically your plywood. So ideally that fascia would be as tall or deeper as the entire beam system. Okay, so I'd probably use something like something a little bit deeper to actually cover all that, but that's fine for what we're doing right now. Okay, so any questions about that process? Look good? Okay, that's it. So go ahead and keep working on that, or also work on finishing up the residence, and I'll keep going around and talking to everybody.